Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 24th of January, comes to you from London. And markets still pretty mixed, with sentiment for global growth fairly bearish, and awaiting news from the ECB today. Looking at the dollar index, we see that we did dip yesterday, but we're back into recovery, so we are still bullish on the dollar. And we do have these downside targets hanging over us, but we're seeing that dollar strength kicking in all the time. That's leading to euro weakness, euro dollar pushing lower. So euro is still looking vulnerable, and again, as I say, we're waiting this ECB announcements today. Looking at the yen, dollar strong here as well, and against the pound, sterling actually looking stronger against the dollar, sitting at breaking that 130 level, so pretty key there. Looking against the euro, sterling also looking stronger and turning long-term bullish. We need a few weeks to really be convinced here, but it's just showing that the euro is the sentiment is almost lower against the euro than it is against sterling. Against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling not quite as strong, but still looking holding on to its short-term bull trend. Against the Aussie dollar, looking stronger at 184. Bitcoin still struggling, no new story there. And the US stock market last night, we saw the S&P was up 0.2%. So it did recover a little bit, but we do have this downside target on the short-term chart hanging over us. The Nasdaq 100 was also just recovered a little bit yesterday, but still these indices looking fairly vulnerable. The Dow was up 0.7%, and the Russell 2000 was also just struggled a little bit yesterday. So we're seeing the broader based US market still hitting resistance, which is showing up on that long-term chart. The futures this morning, the S&P future is up 0.1%, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.4%. And looking at the FTSE 100 index, we're down this morning 0.3%, so we are just trending lower there. FTSE 250 is actually bucking that trend, is up 0.2%. So smaller caps are doing better, mid caps doing better this morning. The DAX is up 0.5%, and the CAC Quarante up 0.7%. But again, these charts all still pretty much in bearish mode. Big downside targets here activated on European markets, so we do need to be aware of that. The Japanese market was up 0.3%, weaker yen helping there, and Hang Seng up 0.4%, and the SSE Shanghai Composite was up 0.4% as well, so some respite there. And the Sensex in India up 0.2%, and the Aussie market up 0.4%. So all in all, we are just seeing a little bit of recovery in sentiment today. The Brent crude price sitting back below $61 this morning, so we're back into short-term bearish mode, but the recovery is not yet threatened. We need to just keep an eye on any new downside targets forming. We do have some downside targets here, but not the latest one not activated. We need those to do that. And WTI, similar picture, of course. So again, two downside targets not yet activated. US nat gas sitting at $3.05 and looking bearish on the short-term chart. Gold down 0.2% this morning, still in bearish mode on the short term based on that strong dollar, so that's not helping. And silver we're seeing is struggling to be bullish as well. US 10-year yields sitting at 2.74%, just heading back into slightly bearish territory there. And German bonds actually up 0.5% for the bond price, that meaning the yields are falling. Again, awaiting the ECB today. Looking at the individual stocks, if we go to the Nasdaq, we can just see which the best performers were last night. And the Nasdaq Comcast was up 5%, so quite a good performance there. Starting to look a little bit better on that medium-term chart, and we've got a good upside target. Relative performance is coming off the bottom, so that's looking reasonable. Looking at the worst performers, we did still have them. We've got Take-Two Interactive down 7%, Qualcomm down 4.6%, and Tesla continuing to fall back into bearish territory, down a further 4%. Looking at the bellwethers, Apple was actually up 0.4%, Amazon was up 0.5%, but these stocks all still in bearish trends on the medium term, so we need to just keep an eye on that. And Facebook still struggling to get back into the 150s, sitting in the 140s, still bearish with these big downside targets hanging over us. The Aussie market, the best performers were Macmillan Shakespeare up 5%, Whitehaven Coal up 4%, not quite getting through. Of course, you can touch on any of these stocks yourself for an overview of what's going on. Galaxy down 6%, and Northern Star Resources down 5%. So that chart has looked pretty good, wandering up the hill here long term and outperforming the market by some 60%. That's versus the Dow Jones. China, we had a pretty mixed picture, of course. Most half and half, green and red, with not much change, and the same with the Hong Kong market. Looking at the Indian market and the Nifty 50, Yes Bank up a massive 9%. We've seen some quite big performances in the recovery here in Yes, so maybe we're just seeing that coming off the bottom. Reliance Industries also up 1.7%. On the other side, Bharti Infratel down 5%, Tata Motors down 3%. That downtrend continuing, and the massive underperformance on the Dow. The Nikkei, again, we had the Nikkei was up, so we had mostly green. We had Nikon Corporation up 6.7%, so that's pretty strong. But on the downside, we had Takara Holdings down 4%. Taking a look at the UK market this morning, these prices are all coming in live from Yahoo Finance. Just Eat up 3.6%, St James's Place up 2.5%, and TUI, who had a terrible year last year, up 2.16%. On the upside, on the downside, we've got Rickett and Benckiser down 3%, Vodafone down nearly 3%. So quite a lot of these defensive-looking stocks down. AstraZeneca down 2%, and EasyJet giving up the gains that we saw earlier in the week. We've still got quite a bullish week candle here, and you see the live prices coming in as we speak. Looking at the FTSE 250, we've got Metro Bank at the top after a massive 40% fall yesterday. We saw that, just that massive one-day move, and what a weekly candle that's created. So that's really hurt Yes Bank, Metro Bank. We're just seeing a little bit of a recovery there. Spire Healthcare up 4%, Premier Oil up as well. On the downside, we've got Cirrus Minerals down 3.5%. And if we take a look at the Euro Stock 600, just ranking again by performance, ST Microelectronics looking quite strong there, up 9%. Not enough yet to turn the trend bullish. Siltronic in Germany up 7.5%, and SEB Bank in SEB in Paris up 7%. On the downside, we've got Novosis and then Rickett and Benckiser down 3.2%. So we are still seeing some quite big falls on various stocks. So sentiment still weighs on us. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.